Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. She stood in the center of the grand hall, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the crumpled letter of rejection. Around her, the room buzzed with the low hum of whispered conversations and clinking crystal glasses. The long table was covered in white linen, set with gleaming silverware and delicate china, but her simple dish sat untouched on a silver platter, cold and unnoticed. "They say your cooking lacks sophistication." A sharp voice sliced through the murmurs. She looked up, meeting the cold eyes of one of the city's richest food critics, a man known for destroying careers with a single word. His lips curled into a smirk. "This stew tastes like something my grandmother would feed a stray dog." Laughter rippled around the room. The other guests, billionaires and high society elites, shared amused glances, their faces a mixture of superiority and disdain. They wore the latest designer suits and gowns, their expensive watches glinting in the soft chandelier light. None of them looked like the kind of people who would appreciate a humble meal made from simple ingredients and love. Her heart clenched, but she forced herself to stand tall. "It's my family recipe," she said quietly, "passed down through generations. It's more than just food, it's history, memory, and care." "No history can save this," another voice sneered. "This isn't a meal fit for a five-star restaurant. It's simple, basic, forgettable." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She had dreamed of this moment, sharing her cooking with the world, proving that talent wasn't about fancy presentation or rare ingredients. It was about heart. But here, in this dazzling palace of wealth and influence, her food was dismissed like trash. Then, the heavy door at the far end of the hall creaked open, every head turned. A tall man stepped inside, his presence demanding silence. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, and his dark eyes scanned the room with an intensity that made people shift uncomfortably. He wasn't one of them, not another wealthy socialite or critic. There was something dangerous in his gaze. He walked straight toward her, stopping just a few feet away. "I've tasted millions of meals," he said softly, his voice low but carrying through the hall. "But nothing like this." A hush fell over the crowd. The man looked down at her dish, then back into her eyes. "You," he said, "have something they don't understand." Her heart raced. Who was this man? Why was he defending her in a room full of people who wanted to see her fail? Before she could speak, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her fingers shaking. 3 messages. The first was a warning. They don't know what they're dealing with. The second was a name she hadn't seen in years, someone she thought was lost forever. The third was a location. Suddenly, the room went dark. The chandeliers flickered and died, plunging the hall into eerie shadows. The only light came from the glowing screen in her hand. A voice whispered in her ear, cold and threatening, "Be careful." She didn't know who had sent the message, or why, but she felt it deep in her bones. This was no ordinary night. Something dark was happening, and she was at the center. The aftermath later, after the guests had left, some laughing, some confused. She sat alone in the empty hall, staring at the plate of stew in front of her. The rich smells of cinnamon, slow-cooked beef and fresh herbs still lingered, but they couldn't warm the cold pit growing inside her. Her name was Clara. She'd spent the last 10 years cooking in small cafes, food trucks and diners across the country. Always the underdog, always underestimated. But she had a secret. Her cooking was magical in a way that no one yet understood. Her recipes came from her grandmother, who had taught her the power of food. Not just to fill stomachs, but to heal souls. And yet here she was, mocked by people who had never experienced real hardship, whose tastes were dictated by wealth and status rather than feeling. The tall stranger who had defended her, the man who now sat quietly in a corner, was the only one who seemed to see the truth. "Why are you here?" Clara asked him, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, His eyes were sharp, guarded. "Because I believe what you're doing is dangerous," he said. "Not dangerous in the way you think. It's powerful, and they want to control it." "Who?" she asked, confused and wary. "The billionaires, the corporate chefs, the people who run this city's food scene like a kingdom," he said. "They don't want a simple cook like you shaking things up. You threaten their empire." She shook her head, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. "I'm just a cook. How could I possibly threaten anyone?" He smiled faintly. "You don't know yet, but you will." Memories of the past. That night, Clara lay awake, haunted by memories. She remembered her childhood in a small town where the kitchen was the heart of the home. Her grandmother had been a healer in the community, using food to soothe pain and mend broken hearts. The recipes were sacred, handed down from generations before, but something had happened years ago, something Clara never fully understood. Her grandmother disappeared suddenly, and with her, the secret of their family's cooking. Clara had been left alone, struggling to find her place. She had tried to keep the tradition alive, but in a world obsessed with luxury and novelty, simple food like hers was dismissed as old-fashioned or unsophisticated. Still, Clara believed. She believed that food was more than ingredients. It was love, memory, and survival. The stranger's warning days later, Clara met the man again. His name was Elias, a mysterious figure with connections no one could guess. He told her stories of secret societies controlling the food industry, of chefs bought and sold like commodities, of recipes stolen and hidden away to keep ordinary people from rising. "Your cooking is a weapon," Elias said, "but it's also a shield. If you learn to use it right, you could change everything." Clara was overwhelmed but curious. She wanted to fight back against the world that had rejected her. But how? Elias handed her a small, worn notebook. "This belonged to your grandmother," he said quietly. "It contains the real secrets. Study it well." When Clara opened the notebook, her breath caught. The pages were filled with recipes, but also strange symbols, notes about ingredients with unusual effects, and mysterious warnings. This was no ordinary cookbook, a dangerous invitation. Before Clara could process everything, she received an invitation to an exclusive event, a secret dinner hosted by the most powerful billionaires in the city. The invitation was anonymous, but the letter was embossed with the logo of the world's leading culinary society. The message was clear. They wanted her to come back, not as a guest, but as a challenger. Elias warned her, "They don't want to see you succeed. They want to humiliate you. But if you play your cards right, this could be your chance." Clara hesitated. The last time she faced them, she was broken and defeated. Could she return stronger? The night of reckoning, when the night came, Clara stepped into the glittering ballroom again. This time, she wasn't just a nervous cook. She was a challenger armed with secrets and determination. The billionaires looked at her with surprise, some with thinly veiled contempt. But Clara noticed a flicker of fear in their eyes too. She prepared her dish carefully, blending her grandmother's secret recipes with new techniques Elias had taught her. The smell filled the room, warm, inviting, unfamiliar. When the guests finally tasted her cooking, the reactions were mixed. Some scoffed, others whispered in shock, but a few, the very richest, looked at her with awe. Then the tension shattered. A screen at the back of the room flickered to life. A live video began playing, a secret recording from years ago. It showed someone very close to Clara, someone she had trusted, betraying her family's legacy for money. Gasps filled the room. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a declaration of war. Clara's hands clenched into fists. She looked at Elias, whose eyes told her this was just the beginning, cliffhanger ending. The door slammed behind her, locking tight. The lights flickered once more, and the room plunged into darkness. A single voice echoed from the shadows. "You think this is about cooking? It's about power, and you just stepped into a war you can't win." Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Trust no one. Fight smart." Clara took a deep breath. She wasn't just a simple cook anymore. She was a player in a dangerous game. Clara's world had shattered. The image of the person she had trusted most, their secret betrayal broadcast for all to see, burned behind her eyelids like a relentless flame. She was caught between disbelief and rage, but most of all a heavy, sinking grief settled deep in her chest. The grand hall was now a distant nightmare. The faces of the billionaires, some mocking, some calculating, haunted her like ghosts. But more painful than their scorn was the sting of betrayal from someone she thought was family. The coldness of a friend days after the disastrous dinner. Clara found herself at a small, quiet cafe in the city's outskirts, the only place she still felt safe. She hoped to find comfort in her longtime friend and cooking assistant Sarah, but when she arrived, the warmth she expected was gone. Sarah sat at a corner table, her expression unreadable. The easy smile Clara remembered had vanished, replaced by cold distance. "I saw the video," Sarah said without looking up. "It's worse than I thought." Clara's throat tightened. "Why, Sarah? Why would they do that? Why would you do that?" Sarah's eyes flickered with guilt, but her voice was steady. "I didn't have a choice. They threatened my family. I tried to protect you, but sometimes protecting means sacrificing." Clara shook her head, feeling the weight of betrayal settle like a stone. "You lied to me, to us." Sarah looked away, tears glistening but unshed. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." Clara wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse. Instead, she stood and walked away, the door closing softly behind her. A stranger's offer that night. Clara's phone buzzed again. A message from Elias, the mysterious stranger. "Meet me. There's no time to lose." She met him at a dimly lit diner, the air thick with the smell of coffee and fried food. Elias looked tired, but determined. "They're closing in," he said, quietly. "The group controlling the food industry, the consortium, they see you as a threat. Your grandmother's recipes aren't just recipes, they hold power." Clara frowned. "Power? How?" Elias slid the old notebook across the table. "These recipes contain more than ingredients. They're coded with ancient knowledge about healing, memory, and even influence. That's why the consortium wants to control them." Clara traced her fingers over the worn pages, feeling a connection to her grandmother stronger than ever. "So they sabotaged me?" "Yes, and they'll try again." The secret dinner invitation days later, Clara received another invitation. This time, it was more than just a challenge. It was a test, a secret dinner held in an underground location for the consortium's most trusted members. The message was clear. If Clara wanted to survive, she needed to play their game. Elias warned her. "It's a trap, but it's also an opportunity. Show them you're not just a simple cook." Clara hesitated but agreed. She would face them, this time on her terms. The underground supper club. With Elias's help, Clara opened a hidden supper club in a forgotten warehouse. No fancy chandeliers, no snobbish guests, just raw, honest food and an underground network of supporters. Word spread quickly. People from all walks of life came to taste her dishes. Among them were influential figures, journalists, and even a few daring billionaires curious about the buzz. For the first time in years, Clara felt alive. Her food was healing more than hunger. It was healing hearts. The double agent revealed, but not everyone was who they seemed. One evening, Clara caught Sarah sneaking out of the warehouse after closing. When confronted, Sarah broke down. "I'm trapped," she confessed. "They have my family. I never wanted to betray you, but I had no choice." Clara's fury flared. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah shook her head. "I was scared. But I'm done hiding. Together, they planned. A way to turn the tables on the consortium. The secret dinner. The night of the secret dinner arrived. Clara walked into the underground lair, her heart pounding. The consortium's members surrounded a long table, their faces cold and expectant. Clara took a deep breath and began to cook. Her hands moved with purpose, blending her grandmother's recipes with new twists inspired by Elias's knowledge. The aromas filled the room, earthy, spicy, comforting. One by one, the guests tasted her dishes. Whispers spread. Some were intrigued, others shocked. The power balance shifted. The scandalous broadcast, just as Clara was gaining ground, the room's screens flickered to life. A live video played, revealing more betrayals, lies, and manipulations. This time, it was not just Sarah, but others in Clara's circle caught in the web of deceit. Gasps and angry shouts filled the air. Clara's stomach twisted, but she refused to let it break her. She looked at Elias, who nodded, a signal to fight back. Cliffhanger. Ending suddenly, the doors slammed shut. Security guards appeared, blocking exits. A voice echoed through the room. "You think you can challenge us? You're only beginning to understand what's at stake." Clara's phone buzzed with another message. "Trust no one. Fight smart." With Sarah at her side and Elias watching closely, Clara braced herself. This was more than a battle for food. It was a fight for survival. The heavy doors slammed shut behind Clara. Panic swept the room like a cold wave, but she refused to let fear take hold. This wasn't just about cooking anymore. It was about survival. The consortium's elite surrounded her, their faces set with the cruel satisfaction of hunters closing in on prey. Clara glanced at Sarah, whose eyes held equal parts regret and determination. Beside them, Elias's calm gaze was the only steady light in the storm. The trap tightens, the security guards moved with precision, blocking every exit. A harsh voice boomed from hidden speakers. "You think your simple recipes can challenge us? We own this city's kitchens, the markets, the tables where power is served. You're nothing but a nuisance." Clara swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "You might own the kitchens," she said steadily, "but you don't own the people's hearts." A few consortium members chuckled, but others looked uneasy. They knew deep down that Clara's food carried something their money couldn't. Buy authenticity and soul. An unexpected ally. Suddenly, a sharp knock came from the far side of the room. The doors rattled. A woman stepped in, tall, elegant, with eyes as fierce as Clara's own. She was dressed simply but carried an air of undeniable authority. "I think you underestimate her," the woman said coldly, "and you underestimate the people." The room fell silent. The woman introduced herself as Vivian, a former consortium insider who had grown tired of the corruption and cruelty. She had secretly been supporting Clara's underground supper club, spreading word about her cooking and its power to heal and unite. Vivian's arrival changed the atmosphere. The consortium members exchanged nervous glances. The plan unfolds. Back at the supper club, Clara, Elias, Sarah, and Vivian huddled around a small table, whispering. "Urgently, we need to expose them," Vivian said. "Their greed and lies. Show the world what they're really about." Elias nodded. "I have contacts in the media and tech worlds. We can leak the recordings, the secrets from your grandmother's notebook, everything." Sarah's voice trembled. "But won't they come after us?" Clara met her gaze. "Let them come. We're stronger together." The power of food over the next few days, Clara worked tirelessly. She created dishes that told stories of survival, hope, and justice, each plate a silent rebellion. Her underground dinners grew more popular, attracting journalists, activists, and people hungry for change. The city began to stir. Social media buzzed with whispers of Clara's food and the dark secrets of the consortium, a dangerous betrayal. But just when it seemed like the tide was turning, a new blow struck. Sarah disappeared. Her phone was found near the docks, smashed. A cryptic message was left behind. "You're next." Clara's heart broke. Had Sarah truly been a double agent all along, or was she a victim caught in a dangerous game beyond her control? Elias and Vivian vowed to find her. Clara felt the weight of responsibility crushing her, but also a fierce determination to fight on. The final showdown weeks later, the consortium announced a grand gala, an invitation-only event where the city's elite would celebrate their power. Clara received a message: "Come, one last chance to prove yourself." This was it, the ultimate test. Clara prepared carefully, blending everything she had learned: her grandmother's secrets, Elias's knowledge, Vivian's strategies, and her own unbreakable spirit. The gala begins. The ballroom was more opulent than ever, filled with glittering chandeliers and faces filled with smug confidence. Clara stepped in, unshaken. As she served her dishes, whispers turned to gasps. Her food was transcendent, touching something deep inside the guests. Some tried to dismiss it, but others couldn't deny the power on their plates. The truth revealed midway through the gala. Elias hacked the main screen. Footage played, showing the consortium's illegal dealings, betrayals, and cover-ups. The room erupted into chaos. Amid the shouting, Clara spotted Sarah, alive but shaken, hidden behind a curtain. Clara rushed to her side, tears streaming. "You're safe," Sarah nodded weakly. "Thanks to you." Cliffhanger ending as the police sirens wailed in the distance. The consortium's grip on the city began to crumble. But in the shadows, a new player watched. A message appeared on Clara's phone. "This isn't over. They're stronger than you think." Clara clenched her fists, ready for whatever came next. The cold blue lights of the police cars cast long shadows on the cracked pavement outside the gala hall. The consortium's empire, once untouchable, now trembled on the edge of collapse. Clara stood by Sarah's side, watching as handcuffs clicked and powerful figures were led away. The city, once suffocated by greed and lies, finally began to breathe again. But even in victory, Clara knew this was not the end. The scars ran deep. Picking up the pieces days after the raid, Clara returned to her small kitchen, the very place where everything began. The silence was heavy. The chatter of the underground supper club, the pressure of fighting a shadowy enemy, and the painful betrayals seemed like a distant storm. She unpacked the battered notebook, worn by years but rich with stories. Her grandmother's recipes weren't just food. They were legacy, strength, and healing. Her fingers traced the familiar pages, healing the wounds. Sarah was slowly recovering too. After months of hiding and fear, she finally felt free to be honest. "I was scared," Sarah said quietly, one afternoon as they cooked side by side. "Scared of losing everything, of losing you." Clara smiled softly. "You almost did, but you didn't. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." Their friendship, tested by fire, was stronger now, rooted in forgiveness and truth. A new beginning. Clara's underground supper club blossomed into a movement. Word spread beyond the city. People hungry not just for food, but for hope and change. Clara's dishes became symbols of resilience. Billionaires who had once mocked her now sought her out, humbled and desperate to learn from her. But Clara no longer cooked for power or prestige, she cooked for the people. The unexpected visitor one crisp morning. A letter arrived sealed with an unfamiliar emblem. Inside was an invitation, not from the wealthy elite, but from a global culinary foundation dedicated to preserving and celebrating authentic food traditions. They wanted Clara to share her grandmother's recipes and story with the world. Clara's heart swelled. This was more than recognition. It was a chance to heal broken parts of the world through food. The lesson learned. Sitting by the window, notebook open on her lap, Clara reflected on the journey. She had been mocked, betrayed, and nearly broken. But losing everything had stripped away the masks and lies. It had forced her to discover the strength inside, the courage to fight, forgive, and rebuild. Sometimes losing everything was the only way to find who you really were. The final twist. Just as Clara was about to close the notebook, her phone buzzed. Message from Elias appeared. The consortium is gone, but the world is full of shadows. Be ready. A faint smile touched Clara's lips. Whatever the future held, she was ready. Epilogue. The woman who cooks for the world years. Later, Clara stood on a global stage, sharing her story and recipes with thousands. Her food was no longer simple, it was legendary, carrying the weight of history, the warmth of home, and the promise of hope. From ashes, she had risen, and the world tasted her strength. The end.